Welcome to FemLead, the podcast on female leadership and role models. This show aims to inspire and equip you with the tools you need to navigate your career plans. FemLead brings inspiring career perspectives and strategies to guide your path to success. Your host, Alexandra, will interview role models on new exciting topics with each episode. If you like what you hear, give us a review and subscribe to the show on your preferred streaming platform. Enjoy.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Family Podcast. We have a special guest today, a new guest from Lithuania, and I'm very excited to be sharing this interview with you. My next guest is the CEO of RAIT Group in Lithuania, a market research company, and she is also an active representative of key women's business associations in Lithuania. Her leadership approach is described as being balanced and holistic, combining empathy with directness, enabling businesses and teams to align and find their rhythm in a busy market, which in turn helps to achieve a competitive advantage. Her journey with the RAIT Group started 12 years ago in the role of head of projects. However, after many other roles and responsibilities, today she is the CEO of the company. Currently, she ensures smooth operations and development of divisions in the Baltic and Swedish markets, as well as finding and helping to acquire new companies in existing and new markets, so M&A, advising different businesses on solutions to business challenges, and both working on internal and external crisis management. Today, we welcome Dovilė Končak, and we discuss management lessons and how to not forget yourself in the process of becoming an organizational leader. This is going to be a really fun interview, so enjoy. Hi, Dovile. Welcome to Family Podcast. It's really a pleasure to have you here. How are you today?
Well, it's like Sunday, spring Sunday, but not that spring anymore. I see in Lithuania right now, but I'm doing just fine, actually. Very busy time, but enjoying this ride in my life.
I'm super excited that we speak. We were introduced by one of the family team members, and she was extremely excited to introduce you. So really, thank you for taking the time. We're going to talk about some very cool topics that have to do with career progression, with becoming a leader, and of course also with being a woman in business. So I think that our audience will really enjoy this. Let's start by talking a little bit more about your career setup. So can you share more about the scope of your work today?
Yeah, actually, definitely I will try to talk very briefly about this because I'm doing many different things. And when I start to talk about my work scope with just random people and try to explain everything, they're like, wait for a minute. I need time to understand what you're exactly doing. So, but basically I'm working in market research industry. So it's everything about data collection, analysis, and business consultation. Myself, I started as a project manager, in a market research company there in Lithuania. And my passion is business consultation based on data that we can collect and analyze. Right now, I am as a group manager, having different teams in different countries in the Baltics and Sweden at this moment. I am responsible for operations, that everything would work smoothly. And at the same time, working with mergers and acquisitions, meaning that I'm helping the owner of the business find new companies that would be interested in joining our company's group. And my responsibility there is finding those companies, helping with the negotiations, helping with due diligence, especially when it comes to operations, commercial due diligence. My passion is teams collaboration and competition, of course, at the same time when it comes to different companies that we decide to join. So many things are on my plate, but basically it's market research, it's business consultation plus mergers and acquisitions.
Well, those are a couple of areas that we could deep dive even independently on, but I'm happy that you are now sharing it more as a general focus because, of course, your role spans geographies, countries, and also areas, which is, I would say, depending on the size of the company, that's not really that common, but, in some other smaller organizations, it is. And I'm happy that we get to talk to you about how do you make that work, because there's a lot of work on your plate. And maybe one thing that we can start with deep diving into your career path is, the story behind becoming a manager, because now you're a managing director, you're managing teams across countries. But I think for our audience is interesting to, get some understanding of some lessons learned from you becoming a manager and the path to that.
Mm-hmm. I think that when it comes to my career, I should start with the 2005. When I started to live independently, I was 15 years old, if I remember well, or 14 years old. And back in those days, I lived in a very small village with my parents. And unfortunately, in that area, we didn't have a good school. And my parents needed to make a very difficult decision back in those days. And they just said that, okay, let's try to rent an apartment for you in a town. And you can try to go to that best school in our area. So I'm very grateful for this opportunity and this trust that I got from my parents, because, I was a teenager from a small village who got a ticket to live independently and be responsible for everything what I did. But the story, of course, could be much more colorful. I'm not going to share all details right now because we lack time, of course, today. When I started to study at university, at the second year, I realized, that I need to have a good strategy what to do with my career, because it would be very pity if I wouldn't have a good job in terms of my studies, in terms of education that I'm trying to get, because my parents, when I was like 14, 15 years old, they really believed in me, and it would be very pity if I wouldn't do my best to find a job for which I would get a good salary, and we would be able, to live independently there in the capital city of Lithuania, Vilnius. And I realized that it's very tricky to find a job, back in those days. So I decided that, okay, I am studying sociology and I need to knock to all companies' doors that are more or less related to sociology. So basically market research companies. And I thought that, if I knock the doors and say that I am interested in being intern, working for free, all of them will be very, very happy, to allow me to do that. And that was a mistake. I was knocking the doors, but those companies looked at me like, why are you doing that? You are like studying second year at university, Vilnius University, which is still the best university in our country. And it took maybe 6 months to knock to all those doors again and again and present myself, having interviews, explaining my idea, persuading those companies. And one day, the company that I have been still working, or more or less related to that company, said that, okay, let's try. And I thought that, okay, the strategy works, until I realized that now I need to persuade the university to allow me to do that. So it was really, really difficult, but it was worth. And I started to work in data department back in those days, an intern for free, not receiving any salary, but with a strategy in my head, that most likely after some period, maybe probation or whatever, they will offer me a job position. And it happened actually in 7 months. They offered me a position, an assistant position, and I was very, very happy actually, although the scope of my work back in those days didn't satisfy me. I wasn't so much into data analysis as such, but I realized that it's the best way to learn something new and to show off. So very naturally, working a lot, much more than people expected from me, having all those extra work, working on the weekends, late evenings, delivering everything on time or even faster than people expected from me, helped me become a project manager, later research department manager, and naturally in 2015 I became a country manager of RAIT Lithuania. So it was, on the one hand, people, when they look at my career, think that, okay, she was very successful. But when I'm thinking about my career, I think that it was like both 50-50, like strategy and hard work, because I had a strategy, okay, probably it would be very difficult just to get a job in market research company. So therefore my strategy was become an intern. But on the other hand, just become an intern is not helping you to make a good career, to work on a good career. You need to work a lot and even more than anyone else in that company. So if someone is like also thinking about career grow, I think that they should think very strategically and understand that at least the very beginning will be very, very hard, emotional and physically. For me, probably it was much more difficult physically, because at the same time I was studying. And then everything naturally, led me to a group manager position, and now I'm doing what I'm doing. Actually, now I'm responsible for all companies under our organization roof.
Wow, what a story. And I mean, so many things that I got out of this. The first thing that I'm considering is how similar our life stories are related to starting our career. I also moved to go to better school at 15 to another city, because my mom was like, probably this will give you more opportunities. And she was very right. I moved at 15 to go to a high school in a bigger city. And I also started volunteering for the first time there. And I attribute a lot of my leadership skills not to learning necessarily on the job progression, but actually volunteering with other youngsters who wanted to show that they have organizational skills, team leadership skills, and they had, out of a sudden, we all had a stage and a platform to do that. I utilized those volunteering skills in anything I did, and it really helped me. So I really align everything you said about doing extra work and utilizing the setup that you have, not only with your job, but also with school and doing extra projects, because I also believe that that helped me have what people consider a successful career. And also something that I think we're both very similar in is that I never heard in your speech so far that you had any doubts that this will not work out, or that you had considered to give up because it's hard. And I think that a lot of listeners can maybe relate with the fact that sometimes you really want to give up because it is hard, and maybe you don't know whether your efforts will take you in the right direction. But if I can sum up something that obviously your career path inspires me to believe, is that if you have confidence that you can do something and you work really hard, there will be an opportunity for you to get in the right place and with the right people in the room and start that career that you've imagined. Maybe it's not, that fast or that immediate that you know what you want or that you are in the right place. But I really think that the mindset of not giving up really helps you. And to highlight another thing you said, based on the timeline, it did take you 10 years to get to a country manager position. And I think that's key, because it doesn't happen overnight. You need to learn a myriad of skills, and you need to work with dozens or hundreds of people to get to the skills of being a managing director. And those are skills that take time to achieve, to acquire. And I'm very happy you highlighted the background of your career, because I think it gives people the understanding that it's not easy necessarily, but it's also not immediate. And that's totally fine. That's how it goes. It doesn't happen overnight, and you need to have a lot of ups and downs in the process. Super happy that you've mentioned all of this, Dovile. I think you gave people a lot more understanding of what does it take and what sort of mindset can also help you to reach that level. And related to that, something that I know we discussed that I really want to deep dive with you into is empathy, because you did mention that in your career you felt that empathy is really maybe an underrated skill for a leader. And I would like to ask you, why do you think empathy is very important for a leader, and why?
I think that we are talking a lot about empathy actually these days, because if you read those posts on LinkedIn, you can always find something about empathy, but at the same time you understand that in most of those cases it's only about nice words, but not about actual actions that those managers or top leaders use on the daily basis, And myself, I very at very early stage understood, that empathy matters a lot, Because I was working with people and I was the youngest among my colleagues when I became a country manager, one of the youngest, I would say, and that was really difficult because at the same time I needed to persuade everyone in my team, that I could be a good manager and I could help this team to grow and achieve best results, compete in the market, compete on services, have good reputation, and do many other things, I didn't have that confidence back in those days, to be honest, but I needed to pretend that I can do that, fake it till you make it. And that was kind of for a long time, the concept in my head spinning all the time, fake it till you make it, because you don't have any other option. You can't show to your team, that you are not brave enough to do things that you need that moment to do. And I'm very happy that I was very honest with my team on the one hand, but on the other hand, I never let them feel, that I lack confidence to achieve what I need to achieve. And that was the moment I realized that empathy matters a lot, because I was very open. I was talking to each person, trying to understand not only what they're doing in the job, on a daily basis, but also what is happening in their life. So I would be much more into their decisions, that I would understand, what is behind their actions, what is behind their behavior. And that always helped me, because it helped me and saved me from judging people sometimes. It helped me when it comes to building teams, allowing people to work together, understanding, who can go along best, with each other in the team, because I felt them. And at the same time, I also help them to understand me better, to understand what I'm doing, what is my strengths and what are my weaknesses, so they would fill in those weaknesses. So, but I wouldn't say also that everything was so nice. Sometimes I also, with allowing people understand me and knowing me better, allow them to manipulate me. And that's not easy. I think this is the price you pay for being a empathetical manager, being a empathetical leader in the team. It's only way, you need to embrace the fact, that always there in the team or in the teams will be someone who would try to manipulate those things that they learn about you. And you need to know how to deal with that. So therefore, when the organization maybe was still struggling with something, in the market, trying to stand out, deliver best results, and do everything just perfectly, empathy really worked, because then the team understood, that we are equal. And that subordination is not the thing, that works in our company. Yes, you are the manager, you are the, team leader or whatever, but these are only titles and responsibilities. That's it. Everything else is absolutely equal situation. And I was very happy that people back in those days that worked in our organization understood it very well and helped me to strive. At the same time, I also help them. So empathetic is really as a skill, empathy is really as a skill important in all organizations. But at the same time, I think that we should talk about both sides, that it provides you with many strengths and good things. But on the other hand, you need to understand that you must be prepared, must be ready to embrace manipulations.
Very interesting reflection as well, because you are talking also about navigating complex organizational setups or team setups that obviously you're not going to discuss in a strategy session, but it's more, human to human interaction, right? And this is really a great point that you're making, to be aware of the fact that whatever comes your way, there's definitely a lesson there, but also you need to be aware that there's always more to the story than what you directly engage with. And I think, depending on the culture, depending on the company, depending on, the culture of the company, these are things that are more prevalent than others. But there are also situations where you need to understand the game and you need to understand what situation you're in to be able to manage it, right? And I think this is where having mentors and having professionals that have maybe more experience in managing complex organizations can really help, because I think, it gives you more of a sparring partner or a sparring colleague to discuss with. So yeah, very good reflection to also be aware of as part of being an empathic leader. When it comes to confidence, because you've mentioned it a couple of times, do you think confidence can be taught?
It's a really good question. Probably I don't have a precise answer to this, but I think that confidence is something that you all the time need to work on. And confidence, like when we're talking about confidence, we also should talk about self-esteem. Because these two things are, in my opinion, very important. And sometimes we mix those things, sometimes we're talking about self-confidence, but actually we should talk about self-esteem and vice versa. And myself, I also probably a couple of years ago faced a situation when I was talking so much about self-confidence, that I'm working on self-confidence, that I need to encourage other people to be more self-confident. But one morning I realized that, and actually it was a morning, that it's more about self-esteem, and you can provide people situations where they can improve their self-confidence. But if they are struggling with their self-esteem because of family situation or childhood traumas or whatever, it might be much, much more difficult, to achieve the feeling that you are self-confident in what you're doing. Either it would be technical things that you are doing in the organization, or more general actions that you are trying to implement on a daily basis. So self-confidence and self-esteem are important. I think that you need to work on both, and it's continuity. It's nothing, that you can learn and say, now I'm self-confident, now my self-esteem is blooming, everything is just fine. And one day it can be fine, another day you can face a situation that you feel you are so down and you even do not know how to deal with that. So therefore, what you mentioned is really important, to have people that would support you. In my career, if someone who is listening to this interview also experienced something like this, was really important to find a good mentor. And when it comes to mentorship, I think it's also important to understand that mentors could be absolutely different in different situations, different career stages, Sometimes maybe the mentor should help you to work really with your self-confidence when it comes to standing for your own values, talking to the manager when it comes to your salary, talking about your position, your responsibilities, and everything. In another situation, the mentor should be someone who could help you with your self-esteem, providing you with a wider perspective of what is happening in the world. And both cases were cases I experienced myself, especially when you have been working for so many years in the same organization. Sometimes you feel that you lose your understanding, about what is happening in the world, what is okay to expect and deliver and what is not okay. And when I'm talking about it, I'm talking because it's really important to keep that in mind when it comes to leading teams, because it's the same as parenthood. You can't expect from your kids something that you are not showing as an example. And if you are struggling with your self-esteem, how you can expect something from your team when it comes to self-esteem? Or if you are not self-confident in your actions, how you can expect your team be self-confident in what they're doing or what they are expected to do in their tasks, on daily tasks. So I think that answering to your question, self-confidence is something that we need to work on, but probably it's nothing you can deal alone. So therefore, one of my solutions could be to find a good mentor, and finding a good mentor is the same as finding a good doctor. You probably might need to change those people until you find someone that, you feel each other very well and you trust each other very, very much to achieve best results at the end of the day.
Super relevant. I'm so happy you've mentioned all of these points, because there's this confusion between people that have self-confidence and where does it come from versus building it up. And I think that, like you said, constant improvement and constantly working on yourself should really be at the top of personal and professional growth. Because of course, you're not going to start your career by knowing a lot, especially when you're, fresh out of uni. But in 5-10 years time, you do possess some skills that you will be able to even use interchangeably. And I know we just talked about it earlier, and knowing what those skills are and how can they help you in different situations is key. And if you don't, if you're not self-aware, and if you don't work on your self-confidence on showing those skills, then of course they're not going to work for you. And you're also not going to be able to work with the team very well to showcase that, hey, these are my top skills. This is how you can help us succeed with your other skills that I personally don't possess as my top skills. And that's a conversation that obviously can differ, but having that openness and that reflection with your team is really key. And you also talked about being aware of the fact that you need support. And I'm super happy you've mentioned it again, because like we've said many times in this podcast, there's not really any guest that came here and said, yes, I did it alone. It was just me. I managed to do all of this. So super important to take away that. You also mentioned, something that I reflected on based on your answers is the fact that you do have you do spend time on being, self-aware and building your self-confidence, and your personality can really shines through, in my opinion. So how important do you think it is to know yourself? And how do you personally work on yourself, both personally, but also professionally?
So answering to your question, probably there could be two different answers. One could be like the romantic one, just sit down and reflect on everything what is happening in your professional, personal life, and see, what you want to improve and what you can improve. But the reality is much more like, let's say, simpler. It's much simpler, because you actually really need just to work, do what you need to do in your professional and personal life, and see, where are your weaknesses and where are your strengths. I think that when it comes to technical skills and situations, it's very easy to reflect on yourself. But when it comes to your interpersonal skills and features, in my opinion, the easiest way to deal with that is just to talk to people who surround you. Either those people are your mentors or a mentor, or your colleagues or your friends, whatever. It's absolutely up to you, probably. And as a second step in the situation, is really important, maybe just to write down those things that people think that are your either weaknesses or like areas to be improved, and talk to yourself. Ask yourself whether you really want to improve those things. I remember myself in 2018, I was really trying to please everyone. So everyone would feel like very comfortable, happy. And I don't know, like, I even made a joke, that probably back in those days I needed to be an ice cream seller, so everyone would be happy. Maybe not me, but just, And now I think it was a little bit silly, because you are not an ice cream seller, and everyone won't be just happy. And maybe with the start of the pandemic, I realized, that okay, I could be someone different, I could please everyone, probably. I know how to work in that way. I really can deal with the different teams, different cultures and everything, But at the end of the day, I don't feel happy. I feel that, you're in such like a frame, and while pleasing everyone, you understand that you don't receive any positive feedback. And you start to feel like being angry sometimes, disappointed. and you don't even understand what is happening with you, maybe you no longer like the job you're doing, maybe you no longer like what in general need to achieve. So it's like really tricky situation. So therefore I think that it's extremely important to talk to yourself and understand what the personality you want to be. And when you have a clear vision on that, either yourself like coming to a solution or with the mentor's help, then you can make a decision, what areas you really want to improve. I think it's silly to think that you need to improve everything, because, I strongly believe that we are different and we are good at different things. And therefore, it's beauty of being a part of the team, because the different people that filling in different niches in the team, in the job you are doing. So don't judge yourself too much. Just work on the areas you really want to work on, but just for better understanding what exactly need to be or should be improved, maybe you could have a consultation with someone who has absolutely neutral opinion about you as a person.
Like a mentor that is more objective than you would probably have by talking to close friends or talking to family members or talking to former colleagues that know you maybe better. That's a very good reflection. And how good it is that now we also have all of these mentorship programs with different initiatives such as Women in Tech, Women in Ventures. I'm just sharing a couple of them that I know about, where you can actually go and find a mentor that will be giving you for a couple of weeks the let's say coaching that you need on a specific area that you want to improve. But of course they don't know you very well, so then you also get the chance to build that relationship and get some very clear feedback. So I think that to sum up some of the things you've said, this can also be a to-do for someone who would like to go into this coaching journey, to go in one of those mentorship programs and find someone that's a little bit external from their current group of supporters to get some help. I think that would be also very relevant to add on your very good answer. You also, obviously, in your experience, you've also managed a lot of different situations, and I'm sure that you've had to go through difficult conversations. And something I don't want to leave out on this interview is conflict management. So how do you deal with difficult situations, and what advice can you share for our listeners that might find themselves in some sort of conflict and they would need to manage that?
I would like to wish people don't face so many conflict situations in their career, of course, but sometimes it happens. And I think it's absolutely natural situation, that it happens. And there could be different levels of conflicts, sometimes those conflicts are absolutely a natural thing that happening in the organization. Sometimes those conflicts are something that you don't anticipate that can happen at all, at such level. But my only one advice would be to look at conflicts as best lessons for you to learn, and to learn how you behave, to learn what skills are needed to handle those conflicts, and to learn behavior models that you don't want to embrace, that you don't want to have as a pattern of your own behavior. Myself, back in 2015-16, I really faced some situations that unfortunately, but I had those conflicts, and some of those conflicts were very sophisticated that people probably wouldn't even think that they are conflicts, but actually they were conflicts. And therefore, I felt very bad because it was difficult to explain to someone, that I'm experiencing that. And what I learned? I learned basically a very clear model of behavior of those people who were a part of those conflicts that I don't want to be similar to, that I don't want to act like they act. And each time I face, even now, conflict situations, I remember those models, and I stop myself from maybe overacting. I stop myself from situations that could lead me to a situation that I would be similar to those people. And probably, if we remember the topic about empathy, this is a situation that I really understand why empathy is important. Because only when you understand when you remember those people, that acted not well, acted inappropriate way, you understand that you need to try to feel other part of the discussion. You need to feel other people in being into that situation, and then empathy really works. Only then, because it's nice and it's easy to be empathetic manager when everything is just perfect. Then you're like an ice cream seller.
Absolutely.
But the actual empathy blooms only when you have those tough situations, and conflicts are one of those situations. So I know that people face conflict situations. I know that listeners also, at least once in their career, face those conflict situations, or probably will face. So my suggestion would be just to look at those situations as something that you can learn a lot, and learn not only positive things, but also negative things, to have in your head clear profile of people you don't want to be in the future.
Mm-hmm. Very good reflection on taking the opportunity to also position yourself as the sort of leader you want to be, and learn from it this way. Very good reflection. I want to talk to you before we wrap up about motherhood, because this is on something we wanted to touch upon our list. And you are a mother, and you also had your, let's say, development there on career and questions about motherhood. This is a sensitive topic for some, and a very needed discussion for many. So what are your thoughts on motherhood and career, and how did it change your environment and your professional ambitions?
I think that there are listeners, who are pregnant or expecting to be pregnant, whatever. Firstly, I would like to say that there's never right time to have babies. You can, have best strategies, whatever, but those babies are just miracles, and they decide to knock to your life doors whenever they want to knock to your life doors, and just understand that it's just the perfect time for them. But it's being a mother, being a manager, being a person who wants to deliver to society much more than just being a passive society member. It's really difficult. It's tough. It's sometimes even painful physically. I'm not saying about emotional pain that all mothers experience. And what I learned, that strategies are strategies, and you might think that you will have so much support from your family, your partner, or whatever, but at the end of the day, you are alone. You are a mother who needs to deal with all emotions, all hormones, which is really tough, actually. But at the same time, you are the person who is a manager, the person who needs to deliver to your team something that was promised, and so on. So I'm still on the path of learning what motherhood and professional life give to me. But I think that it really encouraged me. I have much more significant, if I may say like this, self-confidence. I remember my son was 5 months old, and I was a speaker at one conference there in Lithuania, pretty big one, like more than 500 attendees. And I didn't have enough time to prepare for my speech, because my son, 5 months, what you can expect from 5 months old baby, basically everything what is unexpected. And I remember I was just once tried my speech, and I was climbing on the stage, and I was thinking, Dovile, you delivered a baby. Probably you will handle this speech, this presentation. It was, on the one hand, so fun. On the other hand, it was so true. And believe me, if you decide to combine, let's say, your motherhood and your professional life, it's doable. But you just need to understand that it's going to be anyway very difficult. Although you expect all help from the whole world, at the end of the day, you will struggle with your guilty feelings, that you are like, I don't know, losing something, missing something, that your baby may be not happy enough because you were paying too much attention to your professional life or whatever, you will need to deal with those emotions. And only one person who can help you is you. You need to understand and remind every second you face such a situation that you are the example. And at the end of the day, probably your kid, not a baby anymore, will look at you and think that, okay, my mother was also scared about something. She didn't feel like so confident when she was on the stage talking about something, but she did. So therefore, she is brave. And most likely, your kid also will be very, very brave in what he or she decides to do. So this is about being a mother and being someone in your like professional life. Don't forget, that your baby is just in time, and you will face tough situations, but everything is worth.
Yeah, it's a good thought to leave the audience with, because in the beginning, when you said it's very hard, I was like, okay, I hope no one considers that it was completely difficult for you. But of course, we want to share with our audience the truth of how it is to become a mother and also be a career woman, and what does it mean to think about it a little bit more abstract in terms of, okay, how would it change my life? And obviously, you're not the first guest I have that has children that has said it wasn't easy, but it is also doable. And you also have the support system. If you have the support system that you need, it's really something that can work hand in hand. But like you said, you are the star of your life in a way. So you need to be aware that there's no one who can replicate you and who you are to your children. So important to keep that in mind, also as a lesson from all of our audience. And I think on that note, I want to finalize with the final 5 fire questions, and then say goodbye to our audience, because I think you still have some very good advice to give. So the first question I want to ask you now is, what is one book that you think everyone should read?
Yeah, actually, I'm not fond of advising one book because I think it's like really important on the situation you're like experiencing that moment. So therefore, I think that book should be the one that would help you to relax. And in my case, it was Chocolate. It's absolutely not a professional book, because there are lots of professional books that I'm sure that you're reading and you think that it's like the key thing. But the key thing is to find, I don't like this word, to find a balance and to have me time. So in my case, it was Chocolate, Joanna Harris' book, because it was different world where you could escape from your day-to-day challenges.
Okay, but that's fair enough. No, we don't judge on your preferences, and we also like to share with our audience all new experiences and pieces of advice that they might otherwise not hear. So I'm very happy you said the book is Chocolate by Joanna Harris. What is the best piece of advice that you have ever received?
Yeah, like one, probably it would be difficult to say. Like now I'm like trying to win time and remember those advices that I received. But I think it was from one of my first mentors, saying that the world is much wider than I think that is. So don't be afraid to look at the world, from different angles. I think that was the most important advice that I received.
So good, so good. Who is your role model?
Right now, the role model would be my mother, because she was the person who was working a lot, but at the same time handling very nicely all family situations, like challenges and everything, And I remember myself that I said that I would be a mother only when I feel that I could be similar to my mother. So I think that, yes, so she is my role model.
Very inspiring. What would you choose to do if you were to have another career?
Probably I would sew clothes.
Okay, so
that would be absolutely a different career opportunities.
Yes.
Because I have that passion. I like when people create something themselves. That manufacturing part is very attractive for me. And I tried once in my career. And probably I would do something like this.
Very interesting. And lastly, if you could change places with someone, who would it be and why?
I wouldn't change, really. Although sometimes I see those people, that I think that they live very nice life or interesting one, but I have so much at this moment. And I think that I have only because I went through all those challenges in my life. And it's about both, professional and personal life that I wouldn't like to change, really.
Thank you so much, Dovile. This has been really a pleasure. I hope you enjoyed this interview, and I hope that you leave today with some good vibes. And of course, you left us with many pieces of advice. So thanks again for joining.
Thank you so much for inviting me. And as a final note from my side, I would like to say, that all my advices that I shared today is more about being flexible and not losing yourself. That's really important.
I love that. I think I'll put that in the title then. What a beautiful way of sharing this interview. Thank you again, Dovile. I hope you've all enjoyed this interview and stay tuned for more updates with inspiring female role models.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of FemLead Podcast. Share the news with your friends and follow us on social media at FemLead Podcast everywhere.